have to say that Lalanna's song is one of the most interesting films I've ever seen.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I get very happy when women say that. Women need to be recognized, need to be encouraged, need to be provided spaces more than taking up spaces, which we do in any case, make way for women storytelling. All kinds of women characters and storytelling. Because the minute we say women storytelling, we see martyrs. Because it's like women have to be heroes, they have to be saviors, they have to
Exactly.
which only happens to brown women. I do think it's normal for a group of women to talk about sex. I think it's normal for a group of men and women to also talk about sex and to also focus on the awkwardness men feel when women start talking about sex.
What's happening in the country with respect to all these religious
We should be very scared, We should be very scared.
Did you ever want to make this as a full-length feature film, say perhaps for like 2 hours or 2.5 hours?
I was told to after the producers saw the film, they're like, why don't you make it into a feature? Because
Hi Megha, welcome to Cinema Express. I watched
Thank
your
you.
short and I have to say that Lalanna's song is one of the most interesting films I've ever seen.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I get very happy when women say that,
I as women, I loved watching a lot of these elements in the film. So I want to start by asking this. Lalanna is what I interpreted was almost like a spiritual, otherworldly person, like masquerading as a girl. She opens their eyes to certain brutal realities, which we'll come to later. But I want to know who was the Lalanna in your life who opened doors to different perspectives.
I think I was the Lalanna in my own life, because I think, and I believe that every woman I went through as a rite of passage in time is a Lalanna, because, we all somehow are pushed off the cliff by people, and some of us survive, some of us don't. So Lalanna's song is that homage to the women who survived and the women who didn't, but it's mostly about the women who are pushed off the cliff.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. It's extremely hard to unpack all the themes in your story in like a single interview, but let me just try.
Sure.
The first thing that caught me was how you're so drawn into the story with these two powerhouse of performers, Parvathy and Rima. So with their friendship on and off screen and being advocates for feminism, they're part of WCC. Did your idea of Lalanna's story and its characters naturally land on these two actors?
I used to follow them on Instagram, and I used to read about the kind of women they were. And I had written Lalanna's song. It was always in my head, but I got the time to write it around the pandemic. And I just finished my feature at that point of time, which I just released, What Are the Odds, etc. And after that, I wanted to delve deeper into, understanding Lalanna, who's always stayed with me. So I wrote this. And then it's through, and I was like, there are only two women who can make space for a film like this. But I don't think, what. And then it turns out that they had seen What Are the Odds, and Geetu Mohandas, who I was working with at that point of time, introduced me to them. She was like, why don't you talk to them? And it just happened, it just happened magically in terms of we got along. They said, yes, we're on board. They also had time because it was during the last wave of the pandemic. I think, So 2022 was when we wrapped on this film, and I only wanted to cast them. Trust me when I say this, Narayani. When I saw them together, because they would post these videos, and the more I saw them together, the more ambitious I became for my own film, because I said, if I can cast these two girls, I can pull off a lot of scenes, because they are very intelligent women in real life, and they have a lot of integrity towards women, which is the most appealing thing about them. And they immediately understand what it is to make space for all kinds of women. With actors who are as instinctively intelligent as Rima and Parvathy, you don't have to sugarcoat characters for them, by saying that ye achhi nari hai, they don't. They have space for all kinds of women, and they are such nuanced and layered actresses themselves, and they understood the politics of the film brilliantly. So yeah.
And you don't need to really tell them that this is the politics of the film.
No, they absolutely got it. They were just, they are one-shot stars, yeah. I mean, I'm not kidding you, because our scenes were so complex and they were in such complex locations that we had to prep. And independent films have very tiny budgets. It's not like we can shoot 10 shots when the sun is coming down. We only have that window of magic light for like half an hour.
Correct.
तो उसमें हमको करना पड़ता है. So, and with these girls, it was magic, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not a matter of surprise or anything. They are very accomplished actors. So, yeah, for me to have that chemistry with them was really fantastic.
Okay, that's amazing to know. And
Yeah.
I want to know, because your film had won a couple of awards, and I want to understand how important it is for such recognition to be gotten from all these international platforms, as a woman especially.
I think women need to be recognized, need to be encouraged, need to be provided spaces more than taking up spaces, which we do in any case, make way for women storytellers. Don't wait for their festivals, don't wait for their films to go to festivals to acknowledge them. It's as basic as acknowledging stories and getting that gap between male storytellers and female storytellers equally. Because when you look at male storytellers in our country, it's not like they have achieved anything, but they still have work, compared to women storytellers who always have to prove a point. We have to go to so many festivals, win so many awards, get so many great reviews, and then be recognized. Ki
Correct.
dekho. So why do we have to put in all the hard work when our counterparts who are mediocre, who probably don't? I'm telling you, I know male counterparts who's of mediocrity, who have always failed in their storytelling, but will repeatedly get chances.
Yeah.
So this fallacy of gender of making space for gender needs to be shattered, and people genuinely need to hold space. Be it journalists, be it male journalists who are reviewing women, be it roundtables, be it any kind of spaces, be it film festivals, be it production houses. We need to make space for women
Correct.
and clear up space. And if this means compromising in the number of men you have, then do it.
Yeah. I mean,
Make space for women, make space for people who identify as women, make space for all kinds of women characters and storytelling. Because the minute we say women storytelling, we see martyrs. Because it's like women have to be heroes, they have to be saviors, they have to achieve,
exactly.
which only happens to brown women. Where are women making body horror in our country? Women's body horror is a genre that's owned by men in our country. So that's strange.
Which is one of the points that I really like in the film, that these women are not glorified.
No.
They're not mothers and sisters and people who are just put on a pedestal. They are flawed human beings.
Absolutely. But why are they flawed, Narayani? Is because society pushes them by that cliff to be flawed. You think if Shobhi and Miriam had a nice day, they would have behaved like this? No, But it is the constant societal oppression, which breaks itself down into Brahminical oppression, which breaks itself down into a caste or a religious value oppression, where women are forced to wear burqas. She spells it out as well, that this is my cloak of oppression, and you are like upper class Brahminical bitch, So these are the nuances of society that are the real horror stories we have out there, And I'm so glad you spotted that.
Yeah, it was also wonderful to see Lalanna's song unfold in a very feminist angle. The female gaze, men are just mentioned in like passing, like once or twice, just
to give Cobbler on.
Yeah, and I love that they speak about sex, role play, and was that also a conscious choice? Because we rarely see women talk about all of this in instances, because we usually see men talk about all this, a group of men chattering about how they want their women to be and things like that, while these women talking about all of these things just feels very empowering. Was that a conscious choice?
Yes, I mean, it was a natural choice, because how are we with our girlfriends? Do we make fun of the sexual encounter? We've had, and these are, why are we shying away from the kind of women we are? And if we're not a particular kind of women, what are the characters we're writing? And I feel our characters come from us. In a way, they are extensions of our own being. And also, Rima and Parvati, the ease and comfort with which they made the scene their own, they're not acting. There's a part of them truly believes in role play, truly believe. So, because of which it doesn't look very contrived in a way. But yes, again, these are choices I make because I do think it's normal for a group of women to talk about sex. I think it's normal for a group of men and women to also talk about sex and to also focus on the awkwardness men feel when women start talking about sex. uh, you know, or the way they try to match up to that and end up sounding extremely sleazy. You know, trust me, when two men are talking about a scene like this, they would have made it a rape scene. Because sex for them is when men are talking about sex in a populist form like film, it, most of the films I've seen where men express themselves in sexual tendencies, they sound crude and crass. Women have the ability to dignify their experiences, be it sex, be it violence, be it, complexities of love in relationships. They dignify.
Mm,
And that's the beauty of writing women characters.
right. Yeah. So the it was also interesting to see that Parvati was talking about how sexy she feels when she's wearing a burqa. It was empowering for her, even though she was a Brahmin, if I'm not wrong. And
Yes. It was
moment,
chilling, empowering. But
yeah,
that's how Brahmin women fetishize, Savarna Brahmin women fetishize marginalized spaces and marginalized communities. They take over. So that scene is actually very subtextual for me, where Savarna women, and speaking of Savarna women, I am a Savarna Brahmin woman myself. So there's a lot of introspection as well that goes into writing a character like that, you know.
yeah,
So, so it's very easy for us to just say, okay, this is, something we can take over. This is something that we can make ours. And you see it everywhere in popular culture, when it comes to music, when it comes to. So that was a representation of the ease and the entitlement with which we do it.
yeah. And like moments later, she gets into trouble because of the prejudice and religious hatred at the heart of Mumbai. Did
Yeah,
you, by any chance, also want to show the deeper realities of what's unfolding in the country while also bringing back the power to women on bodily autonomy?
absolutely. This is exactly what I've intended doing. So this is the intention of that of the layered quality about that scene and the way it was written. So I cannot add anything more to it because you've exactly defined what I wanted to do. So
I mean, it's also very fearful of what's happening in the country with respect to all these
we
religious
should
hatred.
be very scared. We should be very scared.
Yeah. Through your writing, what did you want to showcase Lalanna as? Like, because she's the center of hate and prejudice, I instantly felt, didn't they just face these a few moments ago? And why are they?
Themselves.
Yeah,
So the hunter becomes the hunted. And that's a theme that I'm constantly obsessed with in life. The kids who get bullied become bullies.
these
So in a
microaggressions that add on
yes,
to, yeah,
yes, and it's the societal. It's the way our society is built. In a way as well. So that circle of hate is late. It's there.
okay. Through her song, it almost feels like, that she says that we are all Lalanna and we are all
Yes,
a part of Lalanna.
yes.
That's
You
how
and me are Lalanna. Me and you are yeah, yeah. So it's a manifesto for women in a way.
your previous short Bunny, if I'm not wrong, was based on child's fears, right? Like Anne
Yes,
Heartbreaks. Even the next film that you're doing, Reshma Shera, is on a little girl. So
yes.
why are your central characters
And
young children?
even newborns that I did
Acid
was
attack
called
victim.
newborns. It's about women reminiscing about their childhood, which
Yeah.
they lost. Yeah,
So why are your central characters young children, if I may ask?
because I think we are at our most vulnerable and at our honest best as human beings when we are children, and we suffer the wrath of adults.
Mm.
We suffer the love of adults as well. We suffer the complexities of adults, and we end up becoming a certain person because of the repercussions of that period in our life. And it's
Mm.
a period in my life I remember very well because which I think I was a certain kind of a person when I was a child that I'm able to go back to maintain a sense of honesty in my characters. So it's a period I remember the most. I don't
Yeah.
have memories of my 20s or my 30s as much as I have memories of my foundation as a human being between the ages of 4 to probably 13.
Mm. That's perhaps why Lalana grows up too soon.
Yes,
She's, yeah.
yes.
And like through this film, did you ever want to make this as a full length feature film, say perhaps for like 2 hours or 2.5 hours?
I was told to after the producer saw the film, they're like, why don't you make it into a feature? Because, I was really told that we should make it into a feature. We should make it into a feature. I think there'll be another story. I think Lalanna's song needed to be a film of that length for me for it to be impactful.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of impact, it has really had a profound impact on its viewers. And I've seen that viscerally as well. People get very uncomfortable, very delighted. It's a myriad variety of emotions that I can see my audience go through.
Yeah.
And it's right till the credits because we have silent credits and then suddenly we start, the acoustic version of Lalana's song and it really baffles people in an auditorium. So I'm very fond of my fun lies in my audiences when they view this film because I think it's so unpredictable.
Okay. Did you also want your work to reflect how Mumbai as a city is changing from being the city of dreams to something else?
Absolutely. How every city is
Okay.
changing, what dreams in Bombay are like what, only the privileged get to dream here. The people who don't have privileges don't even get to sleep because they're very, they're working, making a living.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So when is your next feature film slated to release? What are you working on?
Release, I don't know, but I will be shooting something soon. I'm working on a children's film
Yeah.
with, again, a children's film with strong women characters that I'm very fond of because I think women have really taught me women, the spaces they take up, being a woman myself, being around, a particular kind of woman myself. I think I'm very interested in also the way I see, I'm not interested in stories about men uh, because I feel that they have enough. But
Basis.
men are telling stories about men these days. Men are telling stories about women also because it's become the new thing to tell. So there's a certain wokeness when it comes to storytelling that men have reclaimed as their badge of honor,
Mm.
and the male gaze is so. I won't say it's boring, but it's. I can't have a male gaze.
Mm.
You see,
Okay.
so
Yeah,
yeah.
so that comes my last question. I wanted to understand why did you want to take a horror film in the first place? So I wanted to understand if all these realizations that come through the film that really needs a horror to bring all these realizations. Does
I
it
think
really?
horror, yes, horror as a form, it does justice. Horror has always done justice for communities revolving around injustice, for storytelling that requires calling the focus on an injustice. Because horror allows us to amplify, Horror horror has a genre
Mm.
about it where you can stretch and you can go from fantasy to fact and missing it between moments, whereas you don't get to do that in a simple narrative. And in Lalana's case it worked because these are the horrors, right? I mean, if the horror came around naturally, Narayani, when I was actually writing it, it felt like a horror story.
Mm.
So then you started building, and then I started building on that horror. But what is a greater horror story than societal oppression?
Correct. Correct.
And horror comes from that. The need for horror comes from a society that won't listen to us. So
Mm.
we have to, kind of spoon feed them into telling them this is just a simple horror story. Take what you want from it.
Okay. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
speaking with me. This has been a very insightful discussion.
Thank
And
you, Narayani. And
thank,
thank you for watching the film the way you did because it really makes me happy.
thank you. Thank you so much.